Pompeii tells the story of Milo, who was enslaved as a child and ultimately wants revenge against the Romans who slaughtered his tribe. And I have to say that while the film certainly does present positive elements and in fact interesting storylines at times, unfortunately it is just too off focus to really enjoy. Because we have the character of Milo, who we observe from a very young age in and of itself, and we get to see him surrounded by war in an extremely barbaric scene as a child, and we see him grow into this barbaric man who's a bit of a fighter, who's a bit of a gladiator, and his relationship, in fact, with Atticus is extremely intriguing to watch, as while they do have this kind of vendetta against one another, at the same time they have a mutual understanding. And there are certain moments within the film wherein it feels almost like a bit of a revenge tale, in which you are actually engrossed in the story because you're given everything in a natural manner from the get-go, but unfortunately, certain other storylines aren't presented as well, thereby making them a tidbit of a mess. Because some of the storylines include a love story, one which did not seem natural at all to me. In fact, it felt extremely forced, and they just did it so as to have those certain moments when a particular event occurs that of course you are expecting through the course of this film, simply because of how the film is set up from the get-go, that you are expecting certain events, but really the film decides to stray off from those events, introduce you to the revenge tale, so when that final event actually occurs, the one on which the film is really based, it seems rather unnecessary, and it almost feels like that while the film was setting up one thing, the thing that it seems like it's about to achieve was far more interesting. But when it realizes that they had set up the entire aspect of why Pompeii is so genuinely renowned nowadays, unfortunately, you seem to forget that, and you seem to not be attached to that in any form. Rather, you were fine with the tale you were getting beforehand, even if it were fictional. And ultimately, some of these plotlines don't have their full or at least satisfying resolution, if you will. Rather, you understand through the course of this film that they were introduced to have some of those moments that, dare I say, feel a little cinematic, or in fact are meant to heighten the stakes, if you will, but really, when you're not attached to them in any form, it really doesn't have that effect. Furthermore, from a visual perspective, the film is still a tidbit off balance. In fact, it does have some beautiful imagery to really highlight the horror of certain situations, but at other times there's things like unnecessary use of slow motion and all kinds of blurry images, really making it a strange contrast where at one end you have beautifully striking images that will stay in your memory for a while, and at the other end images that you don't really care for. And through this imagery, there's one particular thing that I really like, that the film managed to highlight the absolute barbaricness and in fact lack of necessity of war, and the genuine horrors of war, and the very mentality that people possessed back in the day was really well brought about in my personal opinion. Furthermore, there are certain moments wherein the film tries to have certain metaphorical themes relating to this cataclysmic event. Unfortunately, they didn't go as deep into it as they easily could have. What's strange is that while the film certainly does provide you a sense of satisfaction on certain elements of the film, really it is the promise or the primary purpose of the film wherein it succeeds least. Unfortunately, the film is a disappointment, not in relation to my pre-film expectations, but my expectations of the film as I was watching it, because it sets up certain things so beautifully, wherein the potential is endless, but at moments you feel like it decided to settle for less, wherein they could have taken so many different angles or undertaken so many different things through the course of those storylines, really making you feel at a bit of a loss for a film that could have been a lot more. Still, Pompeii does provide an interesting tale of revenge, and in fact manages to highlight the horrors of war, but still it is a film that is far too off focus to really enjoy. I'm gonna give Pompeii a no.